Welcome to another edition of Journey of Hope. Thrilling stories of people who have been impacted by the healing ministry of Loma Medical Center. People who have experienced a trauma, medical crises, or cancer. Our special guests today are Gary and Leah Culpepper from Woodinville, Washington. Gary and Leah, I want to welcome you to Journey of Hope, and we want to share with the audience your story. Tell us where you're from, a little bit about your background.
Grew up born and raised in the Pacific Northwest, east side of Lake Washington, east of Seattle, in the Woodinville, Bothell area. Attended school at Bothell High School, graduated from the University of Washington, spent a year in law school at the University of Oregon, and quit that to start a commercial construction company.
So you were in sports. I know there's sports in your background and your family. And what kind of sports were you involved in?
Well, I was a high school jock, captain of the football team and baseball team my senior year, and our basketball team that I played on was fifth in the state. So, and then I played some baseball in college.
Okay, and your son, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but your son's picked that up. And Leah, where are you from?
Originally from Kansas City, Kansas, and then I moved out to Seattle after I graduated from high school, went to college, and started working full-time, and met Gary about 13 years ago.
Okay, and I know between the two of you, you've got 7 children, 2 grandsons, and a couple of great nephews and nieces. And we're going to take a look at some pictures here, but Gary, what kind of work have you been involved in?
Primarily building commercial buildings around the Pacific Northwest and in the remote areas of Alaska, usually places not too many people want to go. So.
Now, when you were in Alaska, were you up there during the pipeline?
Yes, we started up there, actually started business in 1969.
Oh my.
And so we did a lot of work in the pipeline days in the middle of the 70s, and then in the early and mid 80s, a lot of work up in the North Slope for the oil industries up.
I was in Alaska in 64 to 70, and I remember they were just bringing the pipeline into Valdez there. And so you were there about that same time, the latter part of that time.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. Done a lot of work out in the Aleutian chain for the fish industry, southeastern for the lumber industry, and interior for the mining industry.
Now, when you talk about building up there, what were you doing?
Building commercial buildings, support buildings, warehousing, living quarters, because a lot of these remote places that we worked in, you had to build we had places where we'd barge stuff into the beach, and my guys would have to put together parts and pieces for the first night so they have a place to live.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it was so remote.
Starting from scratch. Yeah. Well, I know I've got a brochure here, Team GC, Team Gary Culpepper, and it had a number of different places where you're talking about some pretty good-sized buildings. Is most of this still around the in the Northwest?
Northwest and Alaska.
And Alaska. Okay. Well, you've got a phenomenal family that you are rightly and justifiably proud of. Let's take a look at some of the pictures, and you kind of lead us through, and then we're going to get into the story of your finding out you had cancer not once but 2 different occasions. Tell us about some of these pictures here now.
This is our family picture that we do every Christmas with a letter we send out to all our friends and family. Starting from left to right, in the back row is my oldest son, Kaser, with his wife, Michelle, holding their youngest son, Kyle, and my son, Shaker, my son, Jeff. There's my stepson, Jeremy, and the far right is our soon-to-be son-in-law, Larry Berg. Down below, Aaliyah's holding my other grandson, Tyler, Aaliyah, her oldest daughter, Jessica, who's going to marry Larry this summer. My daughter, Suzanne, who's also getting married this summer, 3 weeks after Jessica. Shaker's fiance, Shannon Peterson, and myself.
Okay, now there's a couple missing here, aren't there?
Tiffany, Aaliyah's daughter's missing from this picture.
Okay, let's go on to the next one and just tell us a little bit more.
That's my second son, Shaker. As of course, he's an avid golfer, which you can see by the picture, but he was just selected broker of the month for the Pacific Northwest. He's in residential real estate in the east side of Lake Washington.
Oh, they got him in the front cover then.
Yeah, he's getting a lot of phone calls off that picture.
And the next one is?
That's my youngest son, Jeffrey, who's a professional baseball player in the Chicago Cubs organization. And that particular picture I took, it was at spring training last year, and the ball was a home run.
A home run.
Yeah, so that was pretty lucky shot I got there.
Okay, we'll just kind of move through these pictures.
There's my son Jeff again at spring training.
All right, now
Leah.
tell us who this is.
Well, this is my daughter, Tiffany. She was Miss Washington USA last year for 2006. And she has now moved to LA and is pursuing a career in acting.
Okay, well, what a beautiful Miss Washington. I can see that right now.
And her name is Tiffany Dorn. So
Okay,
Looks
great.
just like her mom.
That's right.
This is my only daughter, Suzanne, and her fiance, John Hart. John played football at the University of Washington. My daughter, Suzanne, played soccer at the University of Washington. That's where they met.
Okay.
This is my niece and nephew, Reese and Rachel, and grandniece and nephew, James and Ellen.
Okay.
My two grandsons, Tyler and Kyle,
All dressed
just
up.
Last
ready for
Halloween.
Halloween. They're there again with their Seahawks jerseys on. Oh, there we go, Leah.
oh, that's myself and my daughter, Tiffany, after one of the pageants that we attended.
Okay, Mrs. Washington, Miss Washington. Beautiful. Okay, and this is one of your buildings
This
here.
is one of the projects that I actually most recently have developed. It's a Gold's Gym. Actually, I got talked out of retirement to get involved in that, and that's the lobby of the Gold's Gym. It's in Redmond, Washington, the check-in counter. It's a big facility.
It looks like it's a very large facility.
It's an acre and a half under roof.
Oh, my.
Swimming, basketball, racket sports, big cardio area. I've got our cardio theater. All the cardio equipment has their own DVD players. I've got a Pilates yoga room and aerobics room. So.
Okay. Now, this is a very significant picture, and I remember getting word, and sorry that I wasn't able to attend, but what does this represent?
A year ago, October 17th, 2006, I celebrated 20 years clean and sober, and Aaliyah was nice enough to put on a party for a bunch of my friends and family that attended. And I was really honored.
A very important event and something really to celebrate. And our next picture.
That was last year celebrating our 10th wedding anniversary.
All right. Well, what a wonderful family. And we've only touched on several of them, some of them, because I know there are several more that you could be talking about. And every one of them is excelling in whatever it is that they're undertaking. How many years ago was it that you discovered that you had prostate cancer?
I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in March of 2003.
Okay. And let's tell us about the journey that you've been on. And you discovered you had prostate cancer, and then I'm sure that somebody probably wanted to perform surgery, and you decided you were going to look at some other options. Go tell us what happened.
Well, it was a process building up to the discovery or diagnosis of prostate cancer. Over a 2.5-year period, my PSA was rising, and I was real adamant when I turned 40 years old to get annual or biannual PSA tests because my father had prostate cancer.
Oh, your father had it. Okay, so our audience should know that if a man has it and his son, the likelihood of his son is getting it is extremely high. So your father had it, so you were kind of on the alert then.
I was on SIG alert, so to speak, and when my PSA started rising in 2001, I had over a 2.5-year period, 30 different biopsies performed.
Oh, some people like to have biopsies.
Yeah, well, they suck.
All right, so you had 30 biopsies.
And I finally was diagnosed with prostate cancer in March 2003. It showed up in 1 out of the 30 biopsies, and it was
Just one.
Just one.
Tiny bit of cancer.
Very little. It was less than 5% of the sample. So I was told by my urologist that I had a lot of time to explore all the different treatment options available, and there were several, as I found out.
Well, fortunately, Gary, for most people that have prostate cancer, it's a slow growing. When you've discovered that you do have it, it's been growing for a period of time. And unless there's some unusual circumstances, a person does have the opportunity of looking around. So you became aware of that. And then what happened? You began searching.
I began searching on the internet, reading books. Lee and I interviewed 14 different doctors in person and talked to over 70 prostate cancer patients and compiled 3 notebooks of information.
So is this the way you go about your work?
Sometimes when it's a life and death situation, yes.
So 14 doctors.
Yes.
And 70 different patients.
Over 70.
Patients that had gone through different modalities
Yes.
of treatment. So you, rather than just talking to the doctor, you wanted to go out and talk with the patient, find out what kind of an experience that they had.
Correct.
Okay, and what did you, in your journey, what did you find?
The main thing I found out, all the different treatments that were available to me at that time had about the same percentage of saving my life, which was number 1. And it was somewhere between 85 and 90%, which I think is pretty darn good
The
odds.
cure rate and,
Yes.
survival rate.
And so after I determined that, then the next most important thing to me was preserving quality of life. And the proton treatment at Loma Linda won that hands down. There wasn't any close seconds, in fact.
So the 2 of you were on this journey,
You
and
bet.
you were going through. And did you go to the doctors, and did you talk to
did.
some of these patients? Because it's the man's disease, but it's a couple's disease because everybody is involved. In fact, that's true of most cancer. When an individual gets it, the entire family is
Right.
one way or the other is affected. So how did you learn about Loma Linda?
Actually, I learned about Loma Linda the day after I was diagnosed. My son was playing baseball. My son Jeff was playing baseball for Gonzaga University at the time. We were up at a tournament he was in Fresno, California. And driving back from Fresno, a fella that I knew and done business with, that her oldest daughter Jessica was working for, called me and told me he just had prostate cancer 6 months ago, had the surgery, and wanted to know he was there for me. And then he said, since you've got a place in the desert, there's this Loma Linda University you might want to check out. They got a little different treatment option. And he told me a little bit about it. And about 2 hours later, maybe 3 hours later, we were driving through Pasadena, and there was a big billboard, prostate cancer treatment at Loma Linda. And I look at it now, I call those type of things coincigods.
Coincidence,
Yeah.
that's right.
And
Where God moves in,
Yep.
sometimes remains anonymous, but he's working there.
Yes.
So you saw that, but,
I saw
but
that.
you still weren't convinced you're going to come to Loma Linda.
Well, no, because I really didn't know anything about it, and there was very little information to find out about it. And once I started talking to patients, especially patients that have been through the proton treatment, and primarily ones that have been to Loma Linda, I really wanted to come down here, and we did. We came down and went through the tour, the orientation, and went to a Wednesday night support group meeting that I like to call Bob meetings, but and felt right at home.
Well, I remember meeting you. I think we had a reunion up in the Seattle area.
Correct.
And you were still in the search process. And I remember you standing up there. I can remember right where you were, up on the upper right-hand side, and had all kinds of penetrating questions that still remained unanswered for you. But little by little, you found out that coming to Loma Linda. So you came down here, kind of made a decision you were going to be coming, and then you went back to Seattle, and probably in preparation for coming down here. And then what happened?
Well, one of the reasons, not only to research all the different options available, I took 3.5 months to do the research that we did, is because my son Jeff was playing baseball at Gonzaga University, and I go to all his games, and I wasn't.
So you had to get the games.
I had to get all the games in before I made the decision.
First things first.
Yeah, first things first. And when we decided to come down here, it was set up for the middle of summer. In fact, June 18th, 2003.
Remember the date.
And the reason I remember is because after I was diagnosed, I requested to have other tests done, bone scans, CAT scans, MRIs, to see if the cancer had spread. And they all came back negative. And then another God shot in May, so a few months after all these tests were done, I got a message to call up a friend of mine and a business associate who was also a radiologist to ask him for a second opinion. And he
On all the tests
all
you
the
had,
tests.
on everything, okay?
And he came back and said, there's a spot on your kidney I think you need to get checked, and you need to do some more tests. And Lee and I were just heading to Europe for a short vacation, so we had more tests when I came back. And I'll never forget, June the 18th, we're driving to Seattle Tacoma Airport in Seattle to fly down here to start prostate cancer treatment.
You're on the way to the airport.
On the way to
SeaTac to fly down here to begin your treatments.
Which was going to
for
begin
prostate cancer
on the 20th of June.
Okay.
And we were flying down to our condo in Palm Springs, and halfway to the airport, I get a phone call that the test came back not too good, and I had a tumor on my right kidney, that spot, and it was, they thought to be malignant. So.
And you're on your way to come here to be treated for prostate cancer.
So I got on the phone to here because they told me I probably need to get taken care of that first before I did the prostate cancer treatment. And I called down here and talked to Sharon Hoyle, Dr. Rossi's nurse, and she talked to Dr. Rossi and got back to me and said, yeah, you need to take care of that first. And I'm going, ah.
So you had not only one kind of cancer,
Yes.
but two. How is this affecting you, Leah?
Well, honestly, with the prostate cancer and what we learned from the doctors, we knew he would be able to be cured from it depending on what treatment option he chose. Kidney cancer was very frightening.
Pretty frightening, wasn't it?
It was.
And so you made a decision. You need to go ahead and address that issue. And so what did they do? How were you treated?
Well, what we did, and we got to insert a little baseball in this too, we came down, closed up our condo in Palm Springs, and then flew to Fairbanks, Alaska the next day because my son Jeff was playing for the Fairbanks Gold Panthers in the Alaska League.
Oh, well, and you got to follow what your boy's
So
doing.
we did that for a week.
Put your kidney cancer put it on reserve there, and prostate cancer. I mean, a game is a game.
Well, we
So
got to see
who won the game?
Well, he did. We got to see the Midnight Sun game too.
All right. So then what?
Then we came back, and I didn't have a lot of time because this is a more serious cancer, and we met with 3 or 4 different doctors to determine the best approach for the kidney cancer, and we elected to go with a Dr. James Gottesman in Seattle, who actually was my dad's urologist and treated his prostate cancer 35 years prior.
Keep it in the family.
And he did a partial nephrectomy. I can never pronounce the name right, but
They remove a portion.
he removed only 10% of my kidney, and took the tumor out and saved 90% of my kidney. But it's a serious operation, and took out a rib and so forth. And
So now this was when? Now
this was in July the 22nd, 2003.
Okay. So how long were you in the hospital for that?
I was supposed to be in a week. I was in 48 hours.
Did you have a game to go to?
Well, I got another baseball story.
Oh, I can't believe this. Leah, how do you put up with this?
I like sports, fortunately.
Yes. My son Jeff, who's in the Alaska League, his only day off, one of his 2 days off that summer was July the 22nd. So after his game on July the 21st, he flew down from Fairbanks to be there for me before my surgery and after my surgery. And I came out after my surgery pretty groggy, of course, and he had to fly back the next morning because he had a doubleheader. And I said, okay, 2 games, how about 6 hits? And I said, okay, Pops. And his games were broadcast all live on the internet. And the next night, I was in and out of stuff, and I was listening and watching the first game because it was televised live. And he went 0 for 3. And I went to sleep that night and woke up the next morning and got on the computer, and the second game went 12 innings. They won both games to win the Alaska League Championship to go to the World Series. In the second game, boy, I'll get emotional on this. Jeff set an Alaska League record and went 7 for 7.
Oh, my. Wow, that is something else.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we need to get you coming down to Loma Linda now. So you finished that. How soon after you recovered from that did you come to Loma Linda?
They told me 6 to 8 weeks. We were down here exactly 6 weeks later, Labor Day weekend.
And so you began 8 weeks of treatment. And tell us about your experience. Leah, why don't you tell us a little bit? Because I know you were here back and forth, but what kind of an experience were you having at this point?
Well, I want to jump back to when we came up for the orientation,
Okay.
because we came out here in April, and we were able to sit in the support group meeting and take a tour of the facility. And what I remember, and I knew in my heart that this was the treatment, the option I thought Gary should opt for, even before we'd interviewed all the other doctors. Just the feel I got from the people that worked here and the tour, and it just felt comfortable. It felt like home, and the support group meeting was very similar to some of the meetings we've gone to with AA and Al-Anon, and it was just, there was so much hope in that room of the support group.
Positive energy.
Positive energy, people laughing. Someone had written a song that they sang with the piano that night, and it was just unbelievable that all these people were being treated for cancer.
And having such a happy group.
And having such a good time about it, and then there were jokes being told. And it was just such a happy place, and I thought, this is inspirational, and I knew in my heart, I thought, this is where he should go.
Well,
but I knew it was his decision.
We're a religious institution. We make no apologies for it, and we don't believe anybody comes there by accident. When you think of the thousands upon thousands of people that are treated for cancer, only a few come to Loma Linda. Those that come are a very special group. Well, Gary, tell us about your experience while you were there.
This might sound weird, but it was one of the funnest times of my life. We lived in our condo in Palm Springs, drove 110 miles round trip every day, and Aaliyah went to every treatment session with me except for maybe 2, and stopped at Starbucks. That was how I got her coming with me every day. We had to stop at Starbucks close to where you live.
Yeah.
And 4 days a week, we worked out at the Drayson Center, which is a really important place, I think, for people to take advantage of down
The
here.
Drayson Center is our wellness center,
Yes.
physical facilities.
And there's not only the support group meetings on Wednesday night, there's luncheons on Tuesdays and dinners on Thursday for all the cancer patients and their spouses. And we attended almost every one of those every week and really got to meet some new, really good friends.
And these aren't just busy activities that we've scheduled for the patient. These are structured activities that are part of the healing process. The treatment takes place in the gantry or in the fixed beam line, but the healing process is a process of being enculturated into the culture of what's going on here at Loma Linda. So what can you share with the audience that's listening? If somebody's been diagnosed with prostate cancer, what kind of steps should they take?
Well, definitely check out Loma Linda and check out the proton radiation therapy. There's other places that offer it now, but Loma Linda is the leader in the world, and that was real important to me as far as my decision to come here, because there was a couple other places that offered it that I could have gone to too, but I wasn't interested because I didn't want to be a guinea pig. But it's non-invasive. I mean, and there's no side effects or after effects like most of the other treatments that I've studied.
There are some serious side effects
Yes.
by some of the other modalities.
And the side effects we had are nothing.
Or very minimal.
Minimal. Just
When people talk about the magic of Loma Linda, you've heard that term. What do you think they're talking about?
well, one thing that really comes to my mind is the mission statement for the whole Loma Linda University Medical Center, to make man whole. And how I interpret that is they not only treat you physically, they treat you mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. And everybody that works here and I came in contact with was like that. I mean, you could just feel it and sense it whether they said it or not. And it's real important, I think, for the whole healing process.
Do you have the same kind of an experience, Aaliyah?
Absolutely.
Mentally, I mean, the mission statement, what kind of an impact did that have?
Well, for me, it was really important to hear that, because to treat the whole person, as you said, it's a family disease, and so it affects really every area of the relationship. So, and we are spiritually connected, and that was a real important part for me to hear. And I think I felt that just with the people we came into contact when we came up here, from the parking lot greeter at the station to the nurses, everyone that we've talked to here. They seem happy to be here. They go out of their way to help you if you have a question. I can't say enough good about it, and it was like a vacation for us. We just thoroughly enjoyed it. The people that we have met, we just got helpful ideas, and you're walking hand in hand with other people that are going through the same thing. But it was a joy to go through it.
Did you develop some friends with some people that you're still maintaining contact with?
You bet. You bet. Yeah.
Well, I know that you're on the Proton Advisory, and that brings you together here every couple times a year, and we appreciate your being a part of that. speaking to the audience, do you have any word of encouragement? I mean, people get confronted with cancer, and for some people, it's kind of the end. They don't know what to do. But cancer is not the end.
The number one thing I found out through all my experience with two kinds of cancer is that, and I didn't know this going in, I always thought cancer was a death sentence.
Sure.
And boy, there are so many cancer survivors out here in this world, and I'm one of them. And there's many, many more like me. And especially at Loma Linda, with the treatment for prostate cancer and other types of cancer with the proton beam, your chance of survival are a heck of a lot better than a lot of other different treatments that I know of. So it's a scary time, but boy, you've got the support of so many people down here. You don't have to go alone. And when I have people call me that have prostate cancer, that's one of the big things I try to tell them. You don't have to go through this alone.
It's a very important point. And when you're here, you end up bonding with other people and develop some very close relationships. Well, Gary and Aaliyah, I want to thank you for joining us on LLBN and this journey of hope. And I know you're still on the journey. And I know that God is going to use both of you as you come into contact with other people, and you can encourage them and point them here to a wonderful treatment modality that we have here. For our listening audience, we want to thank you for joining us here at Journey of Hope. I'm Lynn Martell with Loma Linda University Medical Center, and our guests are Gary and Aaliyah Culpepper from Woodinville, Washington. Again, I want to thank you for being with us, and our listening audience. We want to thank you for watching, and want to invite you to participate with us next week as we have another segment on Journey of Hope, thrilling stories of people who have confronted some type of medical crises or traumatic injury and gone on to experience health, healing, wholeness, and hope as they've been impacted by the ministry here. Thank you again for being with us, and may God bless each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.